Fireworks at the Phoenix City Council today.
Councilors are discussing police behavior, Chief Jeri Williams' action plan after a series of high-profile incidents. Team 12's Nicole Zymek live in downtown Phoenix right now with the facts as they're happening this afternoon. Nicole?
Yeah, guys, and there are really just two big issues at the heart of today's meeting and on the agenda. The first is an early intervention system. The second is the creation of a citizen review board. Just moments ago, the council voted to approve going forward on the early intervention system. Now, that was part of the 5-point action plan that Chief Jeri Williams presented today at today's meeting. And today's meeting was a continuation of follow-up to a community input meeting session 2 weeks ago that was called in response to a controversial alleged shoplifting incident that happened back in May. That incident sparked use of force debates, and Williams says that the new intervention system would track questionable yellow flag or red flag behavior of officers so that it could be addressed immediately. Now, another piece of new technology that she's calling for, it would be tracking when and how often officers draw their guns. That technology would also track the race and ethnicity of people officers are drawing their guns on. Now, the second thing on the agenda, the other big issue that people are waiting to hear about, is the creation of a citizen review board, which would, of course, be made up of citizens that would look into misconduct or alleged misconduct of officers. That should be next on the agenda. They haven't gotten to it yet, but should coming up here. For now, we're live in Phoenix. Nicole Zymek, 12 News.